Hello everyone, my name's Godin or Jeff, coming at you with another video from GreatLakes-TCG. Hope everyone's having a great OP09 pre-release week. I actually just came back from mine and have a wedding later today, so that's why I'm kind of dressed up, but I ended up winning it, so I got the Three Brothers Leaders pack. That said, regardless, I thought, me and the team, we actually thought it would be a really cool idea to kind of go in depth on some of these, overseas Eastern championships and look at a couple of the matches, not really just watching the whole match over and like just doing another commentary, but rather like actually diving deep into the matchup, kind of saying, hey, what did one player do well, what did one player do wrong, and actually providing good highlighted commentary so people don't make the same mistakes in their matchups if they're playing these certain decks. Today I'm going to be reviewing the championship wave 2. This I believe was over in the Philippines, but to be honest, I think this tournament had the highest skill level play in the top cut compared to the other Japanese tournaments I've been watching, where I just see some people just make blatant mistakes and they're in the top 16-32 range, which to me just feels like not really good to kind of watch and commentate over. A lot of people do this little commentary thing on YouTube. I just think this is a better way to do it. Not waste your time. Let's get into the matchups and just kind of highlight certain moments in the matchup rather than watching the whole thing from start to finish. And we'll see how this series kind of progresses. But today we have 3 games for you. Let's get into the video. Let's get into this matchup. So essentially speaking, this is Purple Luffy versus Shanks. I think this is a very good match to kind of watch in this competition, especially because it's going to be a very common matchup in 09. I think both these players play very well. This is a top 8 situation, so I think the Purple Luffy player does not get to see the curve that they want. They went first. They were only able to play a 4-cost Hitakori Kamazo. Once again, apologize for the quality here. It's native 720p, so this is the best I can give you guys. That said, we'll work with it. But what you see is so Purple Luffy is now going to 7 on their 3rd turn, and despite this, they're swinging 6 with Kamazo. What does that tell us? That tells us that he's not playing Luffy Taro here, which means even though he went first, he's unable to play the best card in his deck against Shanks, essentially, being Luffy Taro on curve. So this puts the Luffy in a situation where he really needs to try to end the game fast, in my opinion, or try to extend the game as long as possible and kind of starve the Shanks either one way or another, especially if you don't see Luffy Taro. But we'll see how he kind of plays this out. Shanks player will just counter out, take as he and then he plays a 5-cost kit from the Purple Luffy side. He takes back his Dawn, which I just thought was funny. Just kind of fast forward to this next turn, the Shanks puts down a Marco, popping the Kamazo, and then we pass. Luffy just swings into the Hyongo, gets rid of it, so there's no more easy cost minus, or sorry, power minus. Swings the Kid blocker. One thing I will say that the Purple Luffy player is doing well here is he's swinging his blockers, because once again, we have to try to push Shanks in as much as and as fast as possible. We want to push his face in, because the longer the game goes, personally, I feel if he's able to stack on a couple of 10-cost Shanks, the minus 1k one, or even the KO one on tempo, it actually gives them a huge swing into their favor. So we really want to minimize as many turns as Shanks can play repeated 10-cost bodies over and over and over, because it makes our ability to go for game significantly weaker. So we want to put him in a situation where putting down multiple 10-cost Shanks is actually going to be hard for him, because he's gonna lose if he tries to do that. So just going to go quickly. So one thing that's really cool here is that because he did not play Luffy Taro on 7, he's actually able to play a 9 mom on 9 because he didn't Dawn minus early enough. One thing I will say, the only mistake I see Purple Luffy make in this match is that he heals the Marco into life for Shanks. I do not think this is the right play, because once again, I kind of said it, either you want to play the starve game and go really long, diminish the Shanks' hand size, diminish his counter power, and you're just going to live through and counter through and attack and block through and then attack into the 10-cost Shanks just really large every turn until he just doesn't have enough ability to counter out, and he doesn't have the ability to defend his life either, and then you kind of just win by going wide. The only other way now is just to push his face in, and that's what you've been doing this whole game. So healing the Marco here, I think, is just not the right call, and we'll see later in the game actually that this kind of comes back to bite him a little bit. So he puts the Marco at the bottom of life, puts out a 1-cost law, searches a Luffy Taro finally, but I don't think he actually ends up playing it during this match because it might be too late. And also there's the second best card into this matchup that Luffy has that he's going to play instead. So just to talk about that, Dawn curve 8, Shanks puts down Rayleigh. That's like the best curve and best card he could play against Luffy because it kills, you know, our 5-cost Sanji. It kills once again the 5-cost Kid, and probably made our 9 Mamba 7k. Just to note, if the 5-cost Marco were still on board, this would still be fine because once again, I don't care about the Marco. I don't care about that swing. He can't hit our 9 mom. That's a 7k. If he swings 6 into our face, 1, I'm at 3 life. 2, I have really good amount of cards in hand. I probably have a 2k in that hand as well. So I really feel like we should just ignore that Marco, ignore his Rayleigh, and just really push his face in and make him hurt. So we'll see how the Luffy plays. So he does swing with the 9 mom, so that's 7 at lead. And just to fast forward a little bit, and then he ends up playing that 9-cost Luffy, like I mentioned. So that is the next best card, and he'll probably leave 1 Dawn upstanding to play in this matchup, by the way, because that 9-cost Luffy will put immediate pressure onto the Shanks' life. So he's swinging 10k here. The Shanks is probably going to take it. And even if he were to play down a 10-cost Shanks the next turn, 1, you're going to guarantee that at least 1 of your 2 big bodies live, and probably both of them live because you're showing the Gum Gum Giant. So if he actually has the Gum Gum Giant, the purple Luffy here, our player here, is in such a good position, especially with 3 life remaining. So you just spend the rest of the game just annihilating the Shanks' face. Did you just go at life, go at life, go at life, ignore board? And that's kind of what the purple Luffy player kind of wants to do. Once again, if that Marco were on field, it wouldn't have mattered to you as much, especially with this board and that life size and that hand size. And 2, if you were at 2 life now instead of 3 life, imagine this board stay going in to face the next turn, because he's going to use Gum Gum Giant here to defend this. Yeah, exactly. So he still has 4 cards in hand now after all that countering, and he, you know, successfully keeps all his characters on board. He's probably able to go for game here, fairly, you know, easy. Oh, so he swings 9. He probably swings another 9 with the Luffy, then put out a blocker. That's what I would do in this situation. I'd swing 999 and then put out a blocker, either a 2-cost Robin or a 4-cost Nami, whatever you have. Yeah, so he swings. Oh, there you go. So he swings 9 with leader. Why are we doing this? Because 1, we really want to pressure Shank. There's a Nami to filter draw. This is perfect. So once again, instead of playing out Luffy Taro here, he opts to go for the blocker play. The main reason is now it's really hard for Shanks to remove this blocker because his cheapest removal options are what? Playing Building Snake plus Marco, or I guess that Nami's, you know, only a 2k, so a Marco would have, like a 5-cost Marco would have just gotten rid of it right off the bat. But that's 5 Dawn, right? And if you're unable to close out the game, say he's only at 1 life right now with that Marco. If he's unable to close out the game, then it's really hard for him to kind of justify playing a 5-cost Marco rather than double Rayleigh and just push into face. So Shanks kind of switched gears here. Instead of attacking our characters, now he's given up on that. He's attacking into our life, which I think is the right play. You know, block her up, attack into life, see if you can go for game the next turn, and then probably save your removal if you have that Marco in hand for the turn after, in case I were to play, say, another Nami or another or a 2-cost Robin. But I believe that's all there is to really commentate on this matchup. But once again, I think the purple Luffy player, despite not seeing his Luffy Taro on curve, played this very well. I think the Shanks player saw everything he would probably want. He had the Hyungo into the Marco, into the Rayleigh 8-cost, into Shanks 10-cost, into double 5-cost Rayleigh. He saw everything, and it still wasn't enough. The only thing he could have seen more is a second 10-cost Shanks if his life was a little bit, you know, better defended instead of having such a big hand. But I'm sure he was missing pieces that he was kind of searching for, which is why he took life so aggressively early on with just those 6 or 7k swings, rather than countering out. Either that or his hand's just completely bricked, which does happen to Shanks sometimes. As we saw, he dropped 2 bricks into the trash when he did those Rayleighs. But yeah, once again, no real point to finish off this matchup. The Purple Luffy ends up winning. So once again, he swings with everything, puts out a blocker, passes, shows Gum Gum Giant with 1 Dawn up. This is such a hard situation for Shanks to be in. I don't think there's any winning play here for him. There's nothing in his deck that can actually help him here. Either way, so GG, Purple Luffy ends up winning. We'll move on to the next match, which I think is also very interesting. All right, so we're getting into the next match. So this is top 4. This is Purple Luffy versus the Doflamingo. So let's just let them set up here while I talk. Essentially speaking, this is a tale as old as time. We've seen this matchup, all over this current meta, 8.5. Essentially speaking, this is in 09. If you're on the right list, probably a 50-50, if not Purple Luffy favored, if you're on the right list. If you're not on the right list, this is very heavily Doffy flavored. If you're not playing any 9-cost moms, I don't see how you win consistently with Purple Luffy unless you go first and hit the nuts, and that the Doffy player is not able to, it doesn't draw well too. So let's kind of see how they end up starting. Doffy goes first, so of course he wants to, whoever goes first is kind of favored in this matchup, to be honest. That's why I say it's kind of 50-50 in the end. He plays the 1-cost Perona, goes ahead and does a search. Purple Luffy does a search and gets a 2-cost Robin. These turns don't really matter, so just skipping forward. Doffy plays Teach, then puts out Weevil using Teach effect, and then Purple Luffy just kind of takes. He ramps again, so he's on 5 right now. On his 5 Dawn turn, he swings 6, which is fine. Probably swings into the Teach, because once again, in this matchup as Purple Luffy, the longer it goes, the stronger you get. So you really want to try and kind of drain the Doffy out of his hand by swinging at his rested characters and kind of push for that endgame where you're able to establish a Sanji or 2 and just get infinite amount of draws, like 2 draws, 3 draws, or 3 cards a turn, and then kind of remove a body while swinging into them, draining their hand, destroying every single body that turns sideways on Doffy's board eventually, and kind of win through just the sheer amount of resources that you just start to develop and build up. One thing, that's why 9 Mom is so fucking good in this matchup, is because it stops an attack and heals you a life, which gives you a ton of resources. One good thing that I think the Purple Luffy player did here, and once again, another reason why to run Kamazo, is that this Kamazo, if he were to say follow this up with a Luffy Taro on his next turn, this Kamazo will be able to pop that Teach. So we'll see if that ends up actually happening. Now, very unfortunate here, very unfortunate, and this is why I always try to, in my guide from even 8.5, I kind of said, you have to play around pudding. The Purple Luffy player probably should have, if he had the counter, so he had the Kamazo in hand, so we did know he had the counter actually. He probably should have used a 2k, 1k to counter out of the 7k swing from the Doflamingo when he put out that Weevil the turn before. So I think that's one mistake that this Purple Luffy player kind of made, is you always want to play around pudding. So if you're going second, you're going to have that extra draw, that extra card in hand. And so you do want, and you're going to be ramping, right? So you're going to be taking a life anyway. So you're going to go from 6 cards to 7 cards in hand. And that's just like perfect range for pudding to kind of come down. If you have 7 cards in hand, I always see Doflamingos kind of attacking, pudding that range. That said, I think he had 8 cards in hand by now, because he's taken 2 life. So you really kind of were asking for it. You really should have. That's why I always say, if you can counter out that first 7k swing, get the cards in hand down, kind of dissuades you from playing pudding. So he puts out a pudding and a Weevil. Very, very strong play from the Doffy here. No, he doesn't put out a Weevil. That's just the Weevil from the turn before. He just kind of moved it over. And then he plays the Boa and swings. Purple Luffy just takes, because now his hand size is low. By the way, I will say, if you get pudding in this matchup as Purple Luffy and you went, like, say you're going from like 7 cards to 5 cards, it's fucking over. It's very, 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 very hard to recover from that position unless you absolutely draw the nuts, which it doesn't. We'll see if he does. If he's able to play out a Luffy Taro here, he might be able to get some comeback. But at this point in time, typically your life is too low, your counter size in hand is too low, and you haven't developed those resources onto board to kind of like, kind of like answer your opponent's board. So this kind of matchup just falls apart for Purple Luffy almost immediately. So the blue Doffy player is playing very, oh, he puts out a 5 cost, kid. So yeah, it seems like the Purple Luffy player here did not draw well after that pudding play. There's really not much you can do. Like I said, you just really fall apart after that pudding. The blue Doffy player actually did a very, very fantastic job here. He didn't see a Jinbei, at least not yet, but he's playing all his cards very well. Ooh, the Jozu too, just to get rid of the blocker. Oh wow, yep. This is just so over. Because he never even got to use the Kamazo's effect to get rid of that Teach. This is just Jover. So, very, very quick one. I guess the highlight here is to really showcase, one, the potential use of Kamazo, but two, to really emphasize playing around that pudding play. Especially if you have the ability to, you really should counter it. If it's gonna take 3 1Ks out of hand to counter that 7K, then no, you just risk that they don't have the pudding and you just take the hit. Obviously, you can't play around everything. And sometimes maybe you could over counter another hit. That said, there's really nothing else the player, the blue Doffy player could have done differently. He kind of played that perfectly. The purple Luffy player here is the one that kind of tanked it for himself. I'm sure he's going to be countering out of that first swing from now on. But just to kind of emphasize super quickly, even if you're going first with purple Luffy, and so you're able to attack first, you just skip. You mini starve. You don't attack into the blue Doffy's life. You really want to only diminish cards out of their hand first and then start swinging once you kind of have established a really good board presence and can contest their board almost completely. Like, no matter what they develop, you'll be able to live through it or contest it. All right, let's just get into this matchup. I think this is a matchup of BY Luffy versus blue Doffy for finals. It's a matchup that we're going to see a lot in 09. Both of their decks have very slight changes from what they're currently playing, so it's not even that big of a deal. But I do think the BY player here plays significantly well, especially into blue Doffy, and you'll see. First thing he does here is on his 2-Dawn turn, I think what he does well is he plays out a 2-cost Luffy that just kind of plays around Perona. Or it's not, sorry, Pudding, not Perona. But regardless, Doffy plays Law, bounces it back to hand, and obviously it's a BY player. If you don't have a Pudding, I really don't care if you're bouncing that back to hand. Here, it's actually kind of interesting that instead of, swinging 7 into the Law and then just replaying out that 2-cost, he kind of just goes 9 to Law just to kind of get rid of it. Personally, I don't think it's one way or another. At this point, he's just saying if I'm risking, if I'm risking the Pudding, I'm risking the Pudding. If Doffy were to swing here prior to being able to put out a Pudding, I would probably just take it. But if he were to say put out the Pudding and then swing, or if you were to say swing before using leader ability and then he still has a Dawn up for Pudding, I would just defend out of it, if that makes sense. But now, just kind of fast forwarding, Doffy kind of plays out the Moria, grabs back the Law, plays the Law back out, doesn't really have anything to really bounce this time around. Going over to the BY player, he has about 10 cards in hand right now, if I got into that correctly. So he just went from 8 to 10, he's at 2 life, he's at 6 Dawn. At this point in time, he's really looking forward to a self-activation. If he can get to 7k 1 life here, he would actually put himself in a really good position for the rest of the game going forward, because then he can kind of do this cycle where he's 9k 1 life, and then that plays around Diable Jambe for blue, Femur. So we'll see if he has a 2k. I think I saw Hiyori when he flashed, but let me double check, because if he has a Hiyori in a brother in hand, he might be able to just kind of self-activate that way. There it is. Okay, well, let's see what he puts back. I actually didn't see. Puts a 2-cost down for, is that a Savo? Draws 2, trashes 2, 7k 1 life. All right, we'll see what ends up. So it looks like he puts out a Punch Luffy and a Raka Luffy. Kind of probably just swings to the Law. Yep, exactly. Swings at the Law, puts out puts out another card here. Once again, trying to minimize as much, Pudding fuckery as he can at the moment. So it seems like, let's see how the Blue Doflamingo kind of responds. Being a 7k leader and also putting out that blocker is really, really good. If I were Doffy here, I would probably, if I had the option to Jozu, that's what kind of what I would go for, just to try to establish that right around now, and we'll see what ends up, like what he ends up doing. Just kind of fast forward this a little bit. So he swings 7 with Moria, which kind of indicates that he probably does not have that. So he defends life there. And I mean, you kind of have to defend life there because once again, if he has a way to get rid of that Sabo, or if he had, you know, say if he were to take it, and you had Flampe, or not Flampe, I keep saying it, Femur, he probably just could have all into life and you would have to kind of discard a good amount of cards out of your hand. One big thing to know is I think earlier in this, I kind of skipped over it, but when I was reviewing this prior to this matchup, at some point in time during some of these searches, he bottom decks 2 Morias. So he already knows that he's playing on a little bit of a timer because he has 2 Morias at the bottom of his deck. Right here, the Blue Doffy player kind of bounces one of the baby bodies back to hand. Sure, it's important just to make sure he can't, you know, get free value out of it and become like a 9k lead with 1 life. That'll be insane the next turn. So, and then kind of keep that cycle up. So he searches, swings with the Sabo. This isn't really that important. Uses leader ability, puts out a Rocket Luffy, and I think that's a, yep, Punch Luffy. And he uses that to pop the Law, and then stays once again 9k 1 life now. Oh, sorry, 7k 1 life. Sorry, miscounted. But so at this point in time, the BY Luffy is in such a dominant position in the game, but it's really not over because once again, he kind of bottom decked his Moria, so the game's a little bit on a timer. So unless he's able to filter back in, I didn't see a Moria in his hand when he's been flashing it, but I haven't really gotten a good look. But unless he's able to kind of see some of his other Morias, he won't be able to sustain this. And the Doffy is still at 5 life. So every turn, he could just start, you know, for the Doffy player at least, he could just start swinging big numbers, big numbers. It's very unfortunate right now that the Doffy just whiffed on leader ability, or else he, you know, there'd be another target for him out to kind of. So even if he gets rid of, even if the BY player is able to get rid of this Moria that's on the field right now, Doffy would have another character that he could kind of, you know, swing 9/9 with every single turn, and then slowly whittle down that BY's hand, and then once again eventually kind of taking over the game once if BY's, you know, hand is diminished and he's unable to kind of continue sustaining this pumping leader ability. So just moving forward, once again he's using his blocker to swing, which I think is phenomenal. It shows that you know are fairly confident with your play right now. He either puts out another Sabo, like, okay, there we go. So he puts out Rocket Luffy. Yep, Rocket Luffy kind of gets rid of that Moria, draws a card. He's probably once again digging for a Moria. I think I saw a Sabo in hand. I don't know if that was a Moria or not. Swings 9 and passes with 1 life up, I believe. Oh, Kuzan then passes, sure. Once again, he's really sticking to the 7k 1 life. He's always sticking to 1 life as much as he can. He's really digging through the deck too to try to get through, probably get to another Moria. So we'll see what the Doffy does here. So he puts out the Boa, searches with Sengoku, puts the Law bounces back to hand. Oh no, he probably used Sengoku to search the Law, played the Jozu instead, and the Jozu bounced the Sengoku back to hand, and then also bounced the Kuzan back to hand. So that's actually pretty good for the Doffy. What's unfortunate is I think the BY players had a pretty good amount of cards in hand, and he just stopped playing around it, is that pudding play. So, oh, he has a Moria in hand, I could see it. So he finally either just drew into it or he just rearranged it to play it. There we go. Now he's gonna end up being a 9k 1 life, which is the kind of cycle you really want to be as Moria. Oh, sorry, as BY Luffy, because this is going to be a very, very strong combo for the rest of the game. Even in his hand is like fairly healthy at this stage in the game. So once again, I think he's in a very good dominant position, and he'll probably be able to keep this up for the next, you know, foreseeable future. Especially because he's able to use one of these Luffys to pop that Boa without even having to swing into it, and then continue to swing at life and kind of ignore the rest of the board. Oh, he didn't even get... I guess he could just pop it the next turn with the punch Luffy, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like that Luffy can get attacked by the Doffy. Or by the Law, I mean. So let's see what the Doffy does. Doffy swings 9 with Jozu. Puts out a Sengoku Search. Finds another Jozu. And just bounces at the hand to try to... So it can't easily be used to pop that Boa, probably. But at the same time, like, this doesn't really... Like, you're what is it? You're kind of like band-aiding the bleed. You're not fixing the bleed. You're kind of just putting a band-aid over it. It's just this kind of slow spiral for the Doffy, but we'll end up seeing if he's able to kind of come out. Because now that he has 2 Jozus on board and a blocker, he might actually be able to put himself in a position. Because the BY Luffy player, now without another Moria, he might be low enough on cards if he activates leader ability to kind of push for a decent game angle here for Doffy. So despite this looking very BY favored, the fact that he doesn't have another Moria to play, and remember 2 are at the bottom of the deck, obviously the Doffy player doesn't know this, but this really does put this BY player on a timer. So he needs to try to end this game before the Doffy player kind of catches on that, hey, I mean, obviously he already knows at this point that this guy probably doesn't have a Moria, so at least not this turn. So he really needs to figure out a go for game push angle very soon before he draws into one. So he uses leader ability. Oh no, never mind. So he puts 2 down on leader anyway, that's fine. Swings with the Moria, probably at the Jozu. He really wants to try to get rid of it here because it's a very big threat, especially next turn. It seems like he only has 4 or 5 cards in hand for the BY Luffy at this point. And so the Doffy player defends. So once again, even with the double Jozu on field, the BY Luffy player still has ways to get over this. It's just a little annoying. Oh, he has way more than 4 cards. What was I seeing? Oh, he has like 7. Yeah. So probably put out the Sabo, leave the punch Luffy in life, and then kind of cycle out your hand some more, try to look for the second Moria, and go from there. So once again, blue Doffy player continues to put out the pressure. It's going to be 9 pings, 9 pings, 9 pings. Put out a searcher or use leader ability. Try to keep that board full with other characters, but while trying to keep that Jozu alive. Putting out Weevils is great too. Oh wow, beautiful. Just replenishing the hand there and getting rid of 2 bricks. So he opted for that instead of swinging with the other Jozu, just to try to keep one Jozu alive at the very least, to try to once again push for game. Because if this BY player doesn't actually see another Moria, his hand size will start to diminish. With the blue Doffy player going down to 1 life here, the BY Luffy player is going to swing another 7 at game. So it seems like he swung with the Moria, swung with the Sabo, swinging with another Sabo. I think the blue Doffy player has very little cards in hand, so he's swinging with the Garp. Doesn't have anything in hand. Really good matchup by the BY player. It did end up coming down to I think a 1K in the end. But I thought these 3 matches were very, very good to go over, especially the first 2, the purple Luffy ones. And I think I had not just to commentate over them, but maybe this BY game I kind of just commentated over, but rather the first 2 games I kind of was able to really identify specific areas where I felt like the purple Luffy player or the Shanks player or this blue Doffy player actually did really well, really poor, and see if you guys can try to avoid those mistakes in your own play. Good luck with 09. I hope everyone opens up a manga, have fun. Look out for my guides, they are still coming out, but I thought it would be cool to try to attempt this style video, especially because I think this CS got very, very little hype or review because it was the Philippines, but I think the skill level here was actually vastly superior to the skill level we've been seeing in the Japanese ones. Don't know why, maybe it's just an opinion piece, but these guys played very well. And I think all of these guys are actually very well known, especially this Ben guy and the Purple Luffy player were actually well known people. Either way, thank you. Till next time, have a great one.